Have you ever felt too small, too insignificant, or too unqualified to take on the challenges before you? If so, you're not alone. Today, let me take you on the captivating journey of a man named Gideon, who rose from obscurity to become one of the mightiest leaders of his time, not by his power, but by his faith. This is a story that will inspire you, challenge you, and remind you that God can use anyone to do extraordinary things. Don't scroll away. This story might just change how you see yourself and your purpose. Our story begins in a dark time in Israel's history. The Israelites were living under the oppressive rule of the Midianites. These invaders would raid their fields, steal their crops, and drive them into hiding. Imagine feeling like no matter how hard you worked to provide for your family, it could be taken away in an instant. The fear, hopelessness, and frustration must have been overwhelming. It was in this atmosphere of despair that we meet Gideon. Where was he? Was he bravely leading any sort of rebellion against the Midianites? No. He was in a wine press, threshing wheat, something that is normally done in the open air. Why? Because he was hiding from the Midianites, afraid they would take what little he had. Like the rest of his people, Gideon felt small and powerless. But God was about to turn his life upside down. As Gideon hid and worked, the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said something that must have sounded utterly absurd, almost laughable. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Yes, you heard that right, mighty warrior. Gideon must have looked around thinking, "Who? Me? Mighty warrior? Are you sure you've got the right guy?" So often we see ourselves through the lens of our circumstances, what we lack, what we fear, and what others say about us. But God sees who we truly are, and even more, who we can become. That day, God was not calling Gideon for who he was. He was calling him for who he would be. But Gideon wasn't convinced. He questioned the angel, essentially saying, "If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about?" He felt abandoned by God, much like many of us do when we encounter hardship. And then he added, "My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." Can you relate to this? Have you ever felt like you're not good enough, smart enough, talented enough, or strong enough to do something that matters? Gideon felt all of this, and yet God's response was steadfast. "I will be with you, and you will strike down the Midianites as if they were but one man." God was not deterred by Gideon's doubts or fears. Still unsure, Gideon asked for a sign to confirm that this message was truly from God. He prepared a meal, and when he placed it before the angel of the Lord, fire suddenly blazed up from the rock on which it was set, consuming the offering. Gideon was stunned. It was clear. This was God calling him. But Gideon's journey from fear to faith wasn't instant. His first task was small but profound. God instructed him to tear down his father's altar to Baal and the Asherah pole beside it. These were idols worshipped by the Israelites instead of the one true God. Gideon obeyed, though he did it at night out of fear. This step required courage, but it also symbolized something deeper, removing false gods and distractions to make room for the one true God. Little did Gideon know this act of obedience was just the beginning. Soon after, the Midianites and their allies camped in the valley of Jezreel, ready to raid yet again. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he called together the Israelites to fight back. A surprising 32,000 men responded to Gideon's call, but God had another lesson to teach. God told Gideon, "You have too many men. If I let you all fight and you win, you'll think you saved yourselves by your own strength." So Gideon sent home all those who were afraid. 22,000 men left, leaving only 10,000. But even that was too many. Then God instructed Gideon to bring the men to a stream and observe how they drank water. Most knelt to drink, but a small group of 300 scooped water with their hands. God told Gideon to keep these 300 men and send the rest home. Imagine going from 32,000 troops to just 300 to face a vast Midianite army. It must have seemed insane. But this was no ordinary battle. God was teaching Gideon, the Israelites, and us something profound. Victory doesn't come from our strength, numbers, or abilities. It comes from God. And here's where the story gets even more astonishing. Gideon didn't give these 300 men swords, shields, or spears. Instead, they were equipped with trumpets, empty jars, and torches. Yes, you heard that right. Trumpets, jars, and torches. Under the cover of night, Gideon divided his men into 3 groups. They surrounded the Midianite camp, blew their trumpets, smashed their jars to reveal the torches, and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" The Midianite camp erupted in chaos. In the confusion, the enemy soldiers turned on one another. The Israelites didn't even have to fight. The enemy was defeated without a single sword drawn. Gideon's story didn't end there. He led the Israelites to further victories, and for a time the land had peace. But what stands out about Gideon is more than just his military success, it's his transformation. Remember, this was the same man who was hiding in a wine press, doubting God and questioning his own worth. Yet when God called, Gideon answered. Was he hesitant? Yes. Did he struggle with fear? Absolutely. But he obeyed, step by step, and witnessed the miraculous. So what does Gideon's story mean for you and me today? Firstly, it reminds us that God often chooses the least likely candidates to accomplish his plans. Maybe you felt disqualified because of your background, mistakes, or insecurities. But God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Secondly, it shows that God's power is made perfect in our weakness. The truth is, none of us are strong enough on our own to face life's battles. But when we trust God, even our weakest moments can become a platform for his strength. Lastly, Gideon's story challenges us to trust even when it doesn't make sense. Gideon faced impossible odds with unconventional means, yet he trusted God's strategy. Are there areas in your life where you're hesitating to obey because it seems illogical or risky? Gideon's example reminds us that God's ways are higher than our ways. So today, consider this. What might God be calling you to do? How might he be asking you to step out of your comfort zone, even if you feel afraid or unqualified? Remember, with God, even the smallest step of faith can lead to extraordinary results. Thank you for journeying with me through the story of Gideon. May his transformation from fear to faith inspire us all to trust in God's plan, no matter how daunting the path may seem. And remember, no matter where you start, God can take you places you've never imagined. Until next time, keep the faith and stay inspired.